Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whatever time of the day you're listening to this. Welcome to another recording of Invincible You. We have a guest with us. We have Simon Akers. Welcome, Simon.
Thank you for having me, Kevin. It's a great introduction, that.
Thank you. I do my best. Now, thank you for being here. As we were kind of saying off screen a little bit, that you're the exception to the rule. But there's a reason that you're here. So just to give people a little bit of background as to who Simon Akers is, who are you? Who are you?
I mean, it's a question I ask myself most days, to be honest. So thank you for putting me on the spot like this. Well, I was really keen to come on your podcast, and I'll work backwards from this because I love the stuff you were doing, Impossible You and everything. And obviously I'm not a strictly contestant, so I'm not sure how I ended up getting in your special cohort. But I'm really honoured that you invited me on. So first of all, thanks for that. I shared at a local business club a little bit about my journey and my story, and very much, I guess, I'm a 37 and a half year old single man who had a number of years down in London, living a life on what they call the hedonic treadmill, ongoing all the time, always on. And then there were some times where I got to a point where things got very, very bad. Mm-hmm. I had burnout, anxiety, depression, and I was able to, through a number of choices and techniques and journeys, I guess, I've been on, I've been able to hopefully, in the main, come out the other side of that. But I think, to summarize who I am, that I'm someone who has had the experiences and probably still has them, but I guess wisdom and experience helps you deal with those things that were problems and still are,
So I do have a question, but before I go on to that question, what do you do now? What's your business?
Okay, so I run Archman. I run a marketing consultancy. So I've spent years working in sort of ad agencies, media companies. And I just decided, naturally, my mental health journey in a way shaped my starting of it. Because it sounds counterintuitive and masochistic to start your own company when you're suffering from certain things, but clearly that's me. But no, I was really keen on sort of building out my own timeline and set my own destiny, really. Yeah. So I started Archman as a consultancy initially, as a way to do contract work and work in agencies and brands and help them with their marketing planning and doing media strategies and supporting their customer acquisition plans. And I've spent 2 years doing that. And I realized that my money can stretch a little bit further if I return to the East Midlands. And I'm delighted I have. And I'm thankful, God, if I was still in London, because I left London pre-COVID. Yeah. And I always think to myself, actually, it's always easy to attribute after the fact. But I think if I'd have stayed in London and then carried on my bunk, I don't know if I'd still be trading, put it that way. I think the lower cost of living was enabled me to carry on, and I went through some dark times there, but I'm surviving. At times thriving, but I wouldn't go that far.
Yeah. I picked up on a post that you, I think it might have been on LinkedIn. I can't remember where it was, but I saw a post of yours that was it was a joy to see, because basically what you'd said was, I'm doing all right. I'm doing okay right now. And it's really nice sometimes to see people step forward, particularly in business, and go, we're doing all right? We're doing okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's so much. I grew up in a sort of a business world where it was all kind of how it looks, or, but we're all in this world, right? This kind of the salaries and the perks and this and that. And I thought, I was, Billy Big Time in the business lounge and everything. And, I thought that was like the goal, decent salary and everything. But, these things seldom correlate with any kind of sense of achievement. I'm reading an interesting book actually by Ryan Holiday. He does stoicism, and there's a book called Stillness is the Key, and he's talking about stillness. And I read a chapter this morning actually about enough, and about the word enough was like almost like a blasphemy in the old days. Enough is like just getting enough. People often try and strive and they get to it and they're not happy. And
Yeah.
sort of going back to your point, I think that world of business and everything can be a bit of a paradox between what you become and what comes across. And I think with
Yeah.
LinkedIn, it does give, go back to your point, it does give you an opportunity to actually address the non-BS world and actually be yourself. And that's what I wanted to do, because I had a voice, people knew who I was, and I thought, well, why don't I use that in a more of I'll go more a humble way, I guess.
Yeah.
Is that the word? I don't know. But yeah.
It was just nice to read. Oh, what was I going to pick up on then? What was I going to pick up on? Oh, it's gone. It's completely gone. Rye holiday.
Lounges.
Rye holiday stillness.
Enough. The sign of enough.
Maybe. Oh, enough. I was going to
yes.
pick the word
enough.
Yeah.
I'm obsessed with this at the moment. This idea of enough. Yeah.
Well, in therapy, we use there's a phrase that we use all the time, and it's called good enough. And it's something we banter about, and it's about being a good enough parent, good enough therapist, good enough marketeer, good enough whatever. And it's about getting to that place where we go, it's good enough. And in therapeutic terms, we literally use it all the time, because all the time we come across people that are striving for more, and it's not good enough, and it's not good enough. And actually in therapy we go, is it enough? Now is it enough? And trying to get people to that place where they can go, yeah, now it's good enough.
I think there's a correlation in people's minds sometimes between striving for some sort of arbitrary measure of success and leading to this like utopian path of happiness or something. And happiness isn't about external events. It's about, again, going back to my ancient philosophy, there's this idea of the inner citadel. What's inside you is what you control, and what's inside you is what, makes you happy. And if you are looking for external events and validations and titles and this, that, and the other to make you happy, you're only going to maybe be disappointed, because you're not really feeling it. And often, even if you do achieve said goal or vapid, milestone, so what? Then what? You always read about these people like that. Then that was a really good quote, and I'll have to share it with you after this because I can't remember it. But it's kind of like, no conqueror has ever felt like they've totally conquered after the fact, or something like that. Is everything ever enough? Alexander the Great, there was a saying that he had as well, and I always think back to that. People who become millionaires, they want to become billionaires. There's this thing about comparison sets, which I'm very interested in. So when you sort of progress, like career-wise, your comparison set can change. And I think people have this ability to sort of, keep up with the Joneses. So say, for example, I had no money, and then I made some money, and I was in the same street as people who already had money. I'd be looking at them now thinking, they've got a hot tub, rather than looking at how far I've come. And I think sometimes we need to be better at, and I'll come to a learning on this in a minute, but I think I'm much better now at accepting, like, considering my circumstances, I'm doing really well, as opposed to, I don't get that. I can't buy that place in West London, Well, nobody can really, but and I think it's important to be realistic, and just because you go up doesn't mean you have to always pivot yourself against that.
There's something really powerful in there. There's a direct correlation with that and our internal monologue and kind of achieving, because it's interesting because you talked about the word happiness, and I did a live on this the other week. I did a full live on happiness. What is happiness? Where does happiness come from? Can we buy it from Tesco's? All of those kind of things. And during the session, I was like, it's not happiness, is it, that we're striving for? It's contentment. And what I did was, for everybody that was watching this, says, tell me a percentage wise of what you would be happy with, happiness wise. And I used the word happiness, and they were all like 8%, 9%, and I was like, ooh, they're very high numbers, they are. And in my head, I was going, if like on a week to week basis, what would be your average? And in my head, I was like 50%, 60%. But as the feed went on, I was like, actually, is it happiness or is it contentment? And I've switched the word happiness for contentment now. I'm not looking for happiness anymore. I'm looking to be content with pops of happiness and joy. But happiness feels like it's too big, it's too far.
I feel like happiness I feel there's a difference between happiness and pleasure. I've read about this. I'm obsessed with this dichotomy because
Yeah.
pleasure is kind of like these moments, these hedonic moments,
Yeah.
the joy and happiness, sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Yeah.
But actually, happiness is not always about these peak hedonic moments.
Yeah.
Happiness is about, like you say, being content with that. Oh, it's raining outside. It's a bit depressing on this Sunday. Let's make a nice meal and
Yeah.
sit down, have a nice hot chocolate and watch a nice film. And
Yeah.
let's just be in the moment and actually accept that this is happiness. It's not, exciting and massive, but it's happiness.
Yeah. Yeah.
It doesn't always have to be pleasurable.
Yeah, there's a real continuum there, isn't there, between the word contentment and then you get to happiness and then you get to joy and excitement and it just keeps going up. But yeah, I think sometimes people, if we switched out the word contentment, I think a lot more people might feel content.
In full candor, when I was living in London, I mean, I was working long hours because you'd feel like you do. It's just sadly, it's a pandemic of itself. The culture. I actually wrote about that on LinkedIn about. I feel like some of the mental health first aider things. It feels like there's a bit of virtue signaling, and I don't feel like companies talk about a big mental health game, but they don't go through with it. And I've got a direct experience of this. And I'm sure you could relate to this, Kevin, as well. And going back to it, I think I was working so hard. I was just chasing the highs all the time.
Yeah.
And my life became this sort of, I love this phrase, hedonic treadmill. Like you always want that more. You always want that next hit, whether it's a night out or a meal at a new place or a date with a new girl or something or a boy, whatever. It doesn't really matter. I mean, I think you need that. I needed that all the time.
Yeah.
And I'd feel down if I didn't get that hit almost. Yeah. And luckily I've matured and slowed down a bit, but I think part of that understanding path to happiness and success and achievement is knowing that not everything it's not always beer and Skittles, as my dad would say,
Yeah, absolutely. Going back to something you said earlier, I'm really interested in how long it took you from the moment that you realize, so you're in London, you're working in London, you're chasing the dream. How long before you realized that something wasn't right, so this point here, to here when you started to do something about it? How long was that?
It's a really good question.
So recognizing, something's off, to then going, right, I'm taking action.
I think I was there for about 7 years, say 7, 8 years. And I think the first 5 years, I was just going through, I was working to live.
Yeah.
I was enjoying it. I was enjoying myself. And I think the trouble is people sometimes moving to the big cities take it quite seriously because there's a lot of serious people. Yeah. But actually, you should just see it as a big party place, really. That's what I went for. I wanted to be in London. I had friends there. I wanted to go to all the riverside pubs and, eat in the common and go to all the fancy restaurants because that's clearly my idea of happiness and pleasure. And it really was. I don't think my bank liked it. My bank balance didn't like it, but I liked it. And but then when I got sort of serious, I thought, right, I need to knuckle. I was sort of, early to mid 30s by now, and I'm thinking, right, I need to knuckle down now, get serious. So had a brief break traveling, went back to London, and what I did, I sort of got serious. So I got like a role, a global agency role, sort of VP, business director kind of level, and all the trappings. And it was then when I realized, hang on a minute, have I bit off more than I can chew, or is this just a way of me saying that I'm not cut out for this or something? I don't know. There's a kind of a self-actualization in there that I realized that maybe it wasn't for me. I mean, I think the fact that after week 2, I was in the cubicle doing breathing exercises, having got an email where, I was like to blame for something, and there was people from 3 continents CC'd in. It wasn't a good day, and I remember sitting there, and I was just like, I felt my chest tighten. And I'm asthmatic anyway, but that wasn't the reason. It just felt like I was getting crushed by this physiological or even conceptual boulder on my back, Kevin. And it was just, and it was so deep. And I was like, and I remember this breathing exercise, and I thought, well, I didn't think anything of it. Then it happened again a couple of weeks later. I thought I was just having a mad day or whatever, or stressed. Yeah. And then it happened a couple of times later. I was like, well, this is wrong. And then I realized, is is this blood money that what's the purpose of this? You know, I've got my, well done, I'm working on this, and I've got that, but so what? You know, I'm so unhappy, and I'm killing myself doing this job, you know? So yeah. And then I realized and then I had a really, really, really bad moment. And I think it was May 2018, I'll never forget it. And I'd been to a European city for the day. This was a ridiculous job. I go to, like, it sounds good on paper, but again, I went to like Madrid for a day trip and a meeting, and most people are like, that sounds cool. But anyway, I don't, yeah, I do like Madrid, but I remember I was on the plane back, and I don't remember anything. I don't remember getting the tube back to Earl's Court to change to go to Wimbledon, and I don't remember a thing. And then next morning, I got this really bad email, and I remember I just broke down completely in tears, and I couldn't function. I was struggling to breathe, and I was on the bathroom floor, and I threw up. I felt sick. I was just lying down, pretty sight, you know, crying in my boxer shorts, whatever, just lying there. I was a total mess. And I rang my boss and I said, look, I need to, luckily they offered me something called garden leave. So they said they pay me to be 3 months off, and I decided to hand in a notice that I can't come back, I'm not well.
Yeah.
And I then went to, I got referred to cognitive behavioral therapy, and I had that, CBT. And then it went from there. I can tell more about that journey, but yeah, that's where I got to. So I'd say there was a sort of again, a very long answer, apologies, but I think there was a long journey, and then there was like a 2 or 3 month window where I realized, hang on a minute, I've gone from working to living to work.
Yeah.
Shit, this is bad. This is pressure. And yeah, I died inside a little bit, and those few months.
What a great point though that you recognized. I mean, it feels like in the moment that you're on the bathroom floor, it feels like there was no coming back from that one there. It was like, physically, I'm being sick. I now cannot move. So
I felt weak.
Yeah. Well,
not good enough.
The episode in the toilet, you could almost get away with it. It's like, okay, I can't breathe. A little bit of a panic attack going on there. And you can get over that one, and we can pull it up and say, yes, but once you're on the floor, I mean, literally on the floor. So at that moment, you got in contact with them and just said, I'm done. I can't do this.
Yeah, I rang my alarm manager at the time. Was actually really cool. Actually, he was one of the good guys, and he said, take your time. We'll have a chat next week, whatever. And actually very supportive. Gave me a list that can employ assistance number, but in fairness, that felt like a plaster rather than preventative. But that's a whole other conversation. But so that was the case, and I rang my parents and I just broke down in tears again, and I was just telling them, I'm like, I just felt like a total imposter, and it was a really bad time for me. And so I started having CBT, which was okay. You know, it's sort of, I like the fundamentals of CBT. Personally, I've done psychotherapy since, which I found a lot more effective than CBT. I know CBT isn't for everyone, but it's a fantastic tool for everyone, but some people are more affected by it than others, as you know. But I like the idea of you attending your thoughts to your feelings, and you can sort of do a sort of a pathway of thinking.
Yeah.
And I found it quite useful for a while. But what that did, that had, like, the doctors thought I had sort of anxiety and depression. When I was talking, so I got referred to CBT, and it was the NHS, and they were really quick, actually, in fairness, in Southwest London. And I had the CBT about 12 sessions. And what happened, Kevin, the anxiety dropped off, but I was left depressed. I was left numb.
Yeah.
So the anxiety, they always say anxiety and depression are sort of, they go quite similarly, don't they, sometimes, hand in hand. I'm not the counsellor, you are, but I just know what I know. I don't want to be careful what I say.
Anxiety is really high. It's a high energy. Yeah. But then if we sustained it for quite a while, what happens is then we drop into this really low depressive state, because it's like an energy that's really high, and we don't go back to middle ground. We just drop into it. Yeah. But then we go back high again, then we drop again. And a lot of people go, I'm bipolar. And I'm like, you're not bipolar. It's just about the energy that anxiety takes, and then you drop like a ton of bricks.
That's a very interesting point. Yeah, that's very interesting, because I was worried about my mental health, whether there was a condition that I had.
Yeah.
And the energy was high, because I've always thrived in high energy, high pressure environments, and I kind of thought that was the norm. And if I didn't achieve it, I was some sort of failure. But actually, that's not the case. But anyway, going back to the CBT, by the end of it, it had definitely taken care of a lot of anxiety. I will say that about the
Yeah.
CBT, but I was left feeling a little bit depressed and numb. And I was driving on the M25 back down to London from Newark, when my family are just outside Newark. And yeah, I just wanted to, that I was so low, and I rang my parents and I felt so depressed. And I said, there's no point in my life. I'm single. I'm unsuccessful. I've got no job. I drove under a bridge and I thought I could just do that with the wheel. Like, I was rock bottom. So they go to the doctors, and the doctor, I spoke to them next morning and they put me on sertraline, the antidepressant. And then from there, I've gone from there really.
Yeah.
So that's me.
I mean, it's such a journey that is. So from London back to Newark, and that's when you set up the business that you're in now.
No, so what happened was I had a few months off, and around the time of that, and late 2018, early 2019, I started doing some contract work. So I was going in to sort of do strategy and planning for agencies and brands, and I started really enjoying that sort of gig economy. Going in like a bit of an assassin, do 3 months work, don't get involved in workplace politics, and get out again. I was like, this is great. I could do this.
Perfect.
And I thought this is a bit of me. That was my saying at the time. I think I used a bit too much, but I really enjoyed that. And but then, so what I did, I set up, I dipped my toe back into a permanent job water, and I was like, I can't do it again. So I decided I was sat in a coffee shop, and I thought I'd set up Archman, which is the name came from my family's dog, Archie. He's a terrier. He's quite bold. He does things his way. And Simon. So I was like, I'll call it Archman after the dog. And that was May 2019. I then left London because I had a big contract that kept me going there. But I left London in October 2019.
Right.
And so I think I made the decision that if the work dries up, and I'm left with a 4-figure rent bounty on my head every month, I'm going to be, screwed, for the want of a better phrase. So I came back, and it just took that edge off things a little bit for me. And since then, I've gradually found my health go a bit better. And COVID, weirdly, at first I was like, what the hell? Because I live on my own, but I'm in a bubble with my family, and it's great to have them up the road. And I think, my family, my parents, they're getting older now, and I just love spending time with them.
Yeah. Perfect. What do you, in terms of from then, what have you started to, I guess, employ, or what strategies did you start to take on to help your mental health improve? What worked for you? So CBT feels like CBT, just to clarify, forgive me anybody that's listened to this that has had great journeys with CBT. It is great, and then there's occasions that I use it in here. I definitely use it, but for me, it's only ever a sticking plaster. It's only ever a cover up. Yes, we can change things by doing CBT. You're quite right in terms of psychotherapy then gets to the root cause of it. Do you know what I mean?
I felt like I was following a framework rather than delving into my own soul.
Yeah.
So CBT is like paracetamol when I needed Nurofen. It was kind of that kind of vibe. That's what I would say. Not that I'm condoning the use of those drugs, but yeah, no, genuinely. And then I had a bit of a wobble early last year, just pre-lockdown. So I got referred to, because I said I just moved back. I felt business was a bit quiet, and I sort of moved back, and I didn't feel like I quite fit, and I was being a bit, I don't know, feeling sorry for myself. But I got referred, and I had some psychotherapy. Insights Healthcare, they're called. They were like the doctor referred me to them, so I self referred, and I had a counsellor who I spoke to. I think it was every 2 weeks or every week. I can't remember. Anyway, she was great, and I said the same thing to her. She said about bipolar. I said, I think I'm bipolar, and she goes, and we were talking, and she said, well, I'm not one to diagnose, but have you considered other things? Like, have you ever had conversations about, for example, ADHD? And I said, no, I haven't. And I looked into it, and I'm actually awaiting an appointment with the neurodiversity clinic in Nottingham, in full candor.
Yeah.
I filled out the forms, and it looks like I'm potentially, I do have the symptoms which align with high to severe. I don't want to self-diagnose because I don't know, but I did fill out the forms, and it does look like that could be what I'm looking for, Kevin. I'm thinking is clarity. Sometimes I think I've learned about that myself, and clarity, and definitely.
Whenever I'm doing a journey in here with anybody, it's always about it's all about clarity and connection. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes we can go back to childhood and we can see certain things. And this is not when I talk about childhood, I'm not talking about the obvious things like abuse and all of those other areas, but it's the subtle things that sometimes we miss with childhood. And life, the way that life can kick in with childhood, so we lose somebody or somebody dies or somebody's ill or patterns change, and that can really affect particularly very, very young children. So sometimes when I'm working
Definitely.
with people, you can see it, but they're not connecting to it. They're just not connecting to it. And I'm like, you can see it, but I don't feel a connection with that. It's like, oh yeah, that happened across there. Look, and oh yeah, that was really interesting. I'm like, I need you to connect to that because that's you. That's a much younger version of you, but I really need you to connect to that right now. And sometimes it takes them a bit of time to connect to that.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm hearing from you. It feels like I hear you going, no, I want to understand. I want to understand. And maybe that diagnosis there will help me understand.
Again, I don't know. I mean, I'm 90% sure that that's the case. I mean,
Yeah.
it's quite annoying because there's a 6 month waiting list. I'm actually waiting for an appointment, probably May now.
Yeah.
But so I'm in a weird limbo at the moment, Kevin. So I'll go back to what's in and out of my control. So in an ideal world, the panacea is that I know what's happening, whether it's ADHD or not. There's a little bit of clarity about how my very busy brain works.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, in the meantime, what I do have is these intermediate techniques
Yeah.
and things that help me. So, for example, I'm obsessed with like I say every morning, every night. The goal is every morning and every night is I journal.
Yeah.
So I write in the morning, like my first thoughts for the day, and I used to use a journal which gives you a little guidance sometimes.
Yeah.
And every day there's a new thing to think about, like what are your preconceptions you can lose today, or it might be, how can you put arrogance aside and be curious today, like all these different things. And actually, at the end of each day, you reflect on it. And I think
Yeah.
reflection has been my biggest. I've really got into sort of listing my achievements. And I don't know if that's a good or bad thing. Now, people think, oh, yeah, life isn't about achievements. That's fine. But I would also argue that it's really good at the end of the day, because when you've had a bit of a crappy day,
Yeah.
I think it's good to get to the end of it and go, you know what? I didn't feel good. I got a couple of not very nice emails, or I kind of felt tired.
Yeah.
I got myself a McDonald's and I should have had cooked something healthier. But I did do this. I
Yeah.
did get out of bed.
Yeah.
I did send through that project. And I think sometimes when you look back, I have days where I'm cloudy,
Yeah.
but I always make sure on the cloudy days, I try and let the sun break through my mental cloud and
Yeah.
write down those beams of sun
Yeah.
rather than. Do you see what I mean, Kevin? I don't think I'm
Perfect.
describing it properly, but yeah.
No, you're describing it perfectly. It's in our minds, in our human minds, because we are very protective and very much driven by this primal need to survive. If you've been through a day like that, it's very easy for us to look at all of the stuff that you didn't do. It's really easy for us to do that, and that might well be true. But you're quite right. Across here, there's all of this stuff that you did achieve. So when you do the reflection, particularly at night, that's what you draw out and shine
Yeah.
the sunshine through the clouds, which
And personalities are different, right? Personalities are different. I want to feel like I've done something, and it's all about, for me, it's about contribution and not achievement, but like purpose and everything. And you said something at a meeting. First time I met you, you said something at a business club, and I really liked it. And you said something about people dying with the fire inside them still, or something.
Music.
And I went,
It was
yeah, music inside them, and you almost brought me to tears, to be honest. I've got an emotional day there.
When I saw that piece, and that was by Wayne Dyer, who was one of the first guys that I ever read. I saw it and I literally welled up and I was like, oh my goodness, that has completely touched me. I have to use it.
I can't stop thinking about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I mean, and not that that's like my raison d'etre every day to have this fire connection. I just want to feel like, even if things are bad and I can have a few days in a row where I feel a bit numb, down, stressed, depressed, there's still some light in there. The shards of light breaking through my mental cloud are still coming through, and it's important to recognize them.
So we're kind of talking about a journey that is probably a journey of awareness around your mental health that is probably about, am I right in saying 3 or 4 years old now?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
3 years, yeah.
would you would you say that you're in a position, or would no, that's not right. Would you say that for you, you feel this is something that you're going to manage now for the rest of your life?
I hope so. I think with me, I'm quite good at. I mean, it's personal, right? Everyone's different. I thrive on organisation and plans and to-do lists and stuff. Other people are a bit more laissez-faire about that, and
Yeah.
it's personal. So I would never be wanting to dispel advice, but I know what's worked for me and my personality type, and what's worked for me is I feel like I've got enough understanding of the tools needed to do that now. Now, I don't always follow through with them. And I'm sure yourself as a therapist, you don't always have your finest hours every day either.
No.
We're all human. But I think the self-awareness piece is so key. So for
Yeah.
example, if I have a bad day and I get to the end of the day, I'm like, oh God, crap today. I know it's because I didn't go for that walk
Yes.
in the morning. I do the fake commute, for example. I walk down by the river. I bake a takeaway cup of tea. And generally, I love it. I'm obsessed with all that. The fake commute is so important.
Yeah.
And I would say that the days I do, I've did a little bit of thinking on this. The days I do the fake commute are the days I feel happier at the end of it. And I feel more productive.
Yeah. I mean, you're tapping into purpose there. And I think on some level, we all have a desire to have a purpose. But interestingly, some people have no idea what their purpose is. When I talk to people in here about their purpose, if somebody's kind of giving me the script and they're talking to me and all of a sudden purpose pops into me and I'm like, oh, purpose. And I say to them, what's your purpose? And they go, I have no idea what my purpose is. Why are you asking me that? I'm just like, because purpose is like drive, isn't it? It gets us up in the morning.
To be fair, I've not really quantified my purpose to you or even me, actually, to be honest. But I just want to be the best person I can to every day to help with my clients, but also do my thing for mental health. And one of my goals in life on a personal level is to help normalize and elevate the mental health conversation as much as possible. And I've got a client that I do marketing for who do mental health publications. I'm a non-exec director at a sort of a men talk thing. It's a community interest company. So I'm trying to do my bit on an extracurricular basis to sort of further that. My dad was a psychiatric nurse, right? It's a CPN, and so I think it's always been in my family, that kind of awareness, and I just feel like I want to make it normal because, especially in my industry that I'm in, it's very much like advertising sounds really sort of on the surface, beautiful and funky and Don Draper-esque, and we're all sitting around having whiskies on nice Chesterfields. But the reality is, it's not. It's usually, spreadsheets and long hours. So I think that disconnect, and we talked about this when I did that presentation before, the disconnect between how things look and how things are often very different. And I just want to sort of come back to that. And I also want to make people realize that it's not always fun and games and beer and Skittles within this seemingly glamorous world. And I think that helps people understand that it doesn't always have to be perfect. It's okay.
Yeah. One of the most, I say this often, so anybody that listens to nearly all of my work, you'll have heard this time and time again. One of the most profound things I ever read was, life is tough. This was Wayne Dyer as well. Well, life is tough, and only once you realize how tough it is, does it all of a sudden get a little bit easier. And when I read that, I was like, once you realize it's tough, you remove the fight. You stop fighting for the perfection and the enough and the more and you stop fighting. You go, yeah, I've got a flat tire.
The enough thing, yeah, exactly. I've become, because I used to, when I was younger, I mean, oh my God, I mean, if something didn't go my way, I'd be like, not blowing up, I'd be like, why is this happening to me?
Yeah.
Like like that kind of not narcissistic, but it's almost like I deserve more. Why is this happening to me? Yeah, correct, right? And as you get older, you realize that, first of all, this shit is not unique to you.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. And, I read a book, The Obstacle is the Way, that I really enjoyed, which is kind of like, you work with it, right? If the wind changes, you adjust the sails, right?
Yeah.
And I love that idea, you play the hand you dealt, all that sort of thing. And once you become at peace with what's in and out of your control, because this whole Stoic philosophy thing has changed my life for the last 3 years as well. like when you accept what's in and out of your control, you do a simple list, like what can I change, what can't I change?
Yeah.
And I do it with all my marketing clients, by the way. For example, right, we can't control the fact that the COVID's happening, but what we can do is adjust our product, that kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
And actually that works with everything, including yourself. So, I know, for example, that I can't, I don't know, something happens or I get rejected for something or I lose a client. There's certain things that are out of my control.
Yeah.
But I've got two choices at that point. I can either fight it, wallow in it, feel sorry for myself, get angry, or I can say, right, what I've actually learned from this experience. And it's hard, the growth mindset isn't easy for people. And I've had to swallow my pride many times and accept, defeat. And I think when you get to it, you actually realize you can learn from things. And that's where I feel a lot stronger now. I'm able to accept, I'm much more accepting of bad things.
Yeah.
Because actually it becomes a good thing. And like you say, I love that. The toughest life becomes an easier life.
Once life is tough, and only once you learn life is tough does it all of a sudden get a little bit easier.
100%. That is exactly that. Yeah, I feel like that's been my life last 2 years.
It's like people making it their life's mission to fight life, and I'm like, just stop fighting, and then you hear them go, yeah, but, and I'm like, stop fighting life.
It's a very interesting point you bring that up. On Friday, I came off Twitter. I put a tweet saying I'm having a break from here, and for my mental health, because I think we're in a bit of a world of that. I feel like there's a lot happening in the world at the moment that a lot of people are upset about, and absolutely correctly so. But sometimes there's some things that you can change and affect, and I believe in the rising of voices. But I also think there's times where we do get lost in the big but and the interviews and the outrage, and sometimes we need to disconnect from that stream of always on consciousness.
Yeah.
Sometimes we need to disconnect from that. It's almost like we're in a culture, Kevin, of being always on.
Yeah.
Matt Haig wrote about it in Notes on a Nervous Planet, that kind of need to always be on and connected and notifications and all this. And it's like keeping up with the virtual Kardashians, and it's like, right, we need to bring that back a bit to ourselves. And, I came off Twitter on Friday. I've not been on since, and I had a pretty good weekend, to be honest, not looking at people getting angry all the time.
I know, because there's a lot of anger on Twitter, isn't it? I mean, it's not a platform I use a massive. I pop on there. I responded to one thing the other day, and it was around something that happened last week in the news. I won't go into it.
Yeah.
And Davina McCall had put something, and then this woman had responded, and then I responded to her. And I was doing it. I was like, what are you doing? You never, ever respond to anything on Twitter. But for some reason, it had prodded me a little bit. And I didn't like what was being said. And I was like, I feel I need to step forward now and say something. So I did. But
but you're absolutely right. And I think this is going back. We're at a point where, I think you said that before, going back to the original point on Twitter, I think there's been an element of the lives that people lead is all about like having a powerful, right, we've got to do this, we've got to do that. And it's okay to not always have a voice and have an opinion, you don't have to. No. It's almost like the world has taught us to feel strongly about everything.
Empowered.
But we don't have enough capacity to think about all these things all the time. I mean, it'd be exhausting, wouldn't it, if we took everything on?
Well, it is. The truth is, it is exhausting. Whilst I remember, there's a really cool guy that you should follow on. I follow him on Instagram. He's on Facebook as well. His name is. So this is what I do with social media: is I clean it up. And I only ever follow people that are feeding me in some way. His name has completely gone out of my head.
Tell me more. What does he do?
It will come back to me. So he talks about ADHD and his own ADHD, and he talks about his own dyslexia and Kerwin Ray is his name. Kerwin Ray.
Okay, I'll look him up.
I'll send you a link to him afterwards. He describes his ADHD and his dyslexia. He's a coach as upgrades, not as downgrades. And it doesn't talk about it often, but when he does talk about those two things, he's like, these are upgrades in my world, because if I didn't have these two things, then I wouldn't be able to do what I deliver. So he talks about it in a really, really positive way. And I just love that he describes them as upgrades. And I'm like, oh, that's amazing. What a great piece of marketing that is.
I love that. You know what my analogy is for life? That like we're served with an atlas.
Yeah.
Yeah, our life is an atlas. All these different roads you can take.
Yeah.
But when you know what you can and can't do,
Yeah.
you're able to close off certain roads.
Yes.
So your journey becomes clearer.
Yeah.
That's how I feel. I think there's as
Yeah.
much providence in knowing what you can't do or what's not for you than what
Yeah.
is. Because people get hung up about what's their purpose, like you say.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's also really helpful to know what isn't for you. You know,
Yes.
types of people, types of jobs, types of life choices. You know,
Yeah.
by shutting those mental roads, you've got your diversion.
Well,
You know?
it's perfect. And when we think about purpose, I think sometimes with purpose we get drawn down the wrong roads of, I don't know. I'm imagining now a young girl that really likes dancing and she loves dancing, and her parents are going, "You can't be a dancer. That's not a proper job. You need to be a doctor or a nurse or something like that." And it's little things like that where we can get drawn down the wrong roads. And again, age, the wonderful thing about age is it has a wisdom to it, and I don't care anymore what people think. I know that I'm not academic. I don't have an academic mind. I have a really creative mind. I'm useless at writing, so I'm never going to be a prolific writer, but nor do I want to be. Do you know what I mean? But only now do I look at that and go, that's not a downgrade. It's fine. You're not kind of grammatically correct in that way, and it's okay because you can have somebody do it for you if you want to.
When I was younger, I did like auditions for like stuff on TV and
Mhm.
everything. Like I did auditions and theatre, and I wanted to be a a little like famous star thing. You know, when you're younger, you have these like ideas of
Yeah.
being a bit different. And I think right now I'm older. I look back at it, and I think I can't think of anything worse. Like I don't know if my expectations, and I mean, obviously my expectations have come down and dampened massively. But it's not even that. I don't even want
No,
wealth or fame. I'm not driven by money or
no,
anything like that. I couldn't give a toss, honestly.
yeah,
My thing is like having enough. That's
yeah,
my thing. Having enough, and actually, going back to the learning, what the journaling does, it helps you appreciate what you do
yeah,
like, deal with what you don't like,
yeah.
and shut the roads on the atlas.
I love that because it makes the journey. Because you imagine that, I love that analogy. I'm so visual. Imagine driving down a road and then all these roads go off and go, oh my goodness, which one am I going down? Which one? Whereas if some of the roads are closed, then you're just your journey is just cleaner and I guess more peaceful.
Absolutely. Like I know it's shut. It's just, yeah, it's like the sat navs in your car, and the sat
Yeah,
nav is perfect.
yeah,
And I think you can't always have everything preordained for you, but you can definitely create your own journey if you know what's not working.
yeah.
And I mean, I'm literally come back up the A1 on the road. So
There was, I'm sure in my head, I seem to remember as having a conversation. There was the journaling, and was there another thing that you do in terms of keeping your balance?
the number of things. I I break up my day. So this is quite interesting for the work from home crowd as well, I
Yeah.
imagine. I cook during the day. So I say this, but I'm actually back at my office today, my
Yeah.
co-working space. So this is now expires. But as of last week previous, I'd cook a meal during the day every day. I'd always block out. No one could contact me between sort of 12:30 and 2:30. I would cook a
Nice.
meal,
Yeah.
I'd cook it, and I'd eat lighter in the evening.
Right.
And that was important to me. I'd go for a walk in the morning on my fake
Yeah.
commute. And actually booking time, I think time management's really important. So
Mhm.
I guess because I do consulting for brands,
Yeah.
I charge out my time on, for example, daily rates.
Hmm.
Now, time is essentially my business, my currency in the main. There's other bits, but
Yeah.
the majority of it, let's be honest, is my time. So I've had to be very, very disciplined with my time.
Yeah.
And I think learning to say no to things is just as powerful as saying yes.
Yeah.
Saying no to toxic people, no to bad jobs. Like I say,
Yeah.
what to say no to those roads. And in there, like for example, I'll only let people book on my HubSpot calendar, which is a link where people can book my meetings on Tuesdays or Thursdays.
Right.
Mondays and Wednesdays are blanked out for client work.
Hmm.
Tuesdays and Thursdays are for partnerships, conversations, this, that, and the other. And Friday's my miscellaneous day. So yeah.
I love that. And there's so much. boundaries. There's so many boundaries in there, but they're boundaries created to kind of help you lead a more peaceful life. And again, it's like your own management systems that you're just placing in
Yeah.
there.
So going back to management systems is my client, like, when, do you ever have an email at a weekend and you think, oh
Oh,
Christ,
yeah,
but you've got to remember, someone said to me years ago, your inbox is someone else's to-do list. And I love
yeah,
that, because actually they're just getting it off their pad, and I'm
yeah,
looking at it, I just flag it for another time. So
yeah,
I've got one of my main clients is, emailed me over the weekend, and I know it's just him, sharing his thoughts, and he's
yeah,
not necessarily expecting a reply. And
yeah,
he knows that I'll reply when I get back on Monday, and that's
yeah,
fine. But I think a lot of people, I think maybe experience and age comes into this or whatever, but any younger listeners, I'd say, take a breath. Don't think, oh God, I've got to reply.
yeah,
No, give yourself boundaries. And
yeah,
boundaries are fine, but boundaries shouldn't be frowned upon. In a world obsessed with work, now I'm self-employed, I have to be. Boundaries are the win,
yeah.
definitely.
And particularly when we start looking at mental health, they're really, really important then. Do you know what I mean? I remember years ago talking about mobile phones and talking about how, so I make the choice, I love the word choice, to step into somebody's world and drop them a text message and go, how are you? We haven't spoken for a while, just checking in, yada, 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 yada. Then I have an unconscious expectation that they will respond to me. If they haven't responded in within about 24 hours, because that's my expectation, then I might start getting a little bit shirty with them. Why have you not? And then in my head, I'm going, but we have created all of this, and we have created all of those kind of. We have no manners over how we use phones, communication, text messages, messenger. I get to a Monday morning now, and I have to check probably about 5 different platforms to see how people have contacted me, because I might have had a text, I might have had an email, I might have had a WhatsApp, I might have had a messenger. So then I have to, because I haven't responded over the weekend because it's my weekend, I then have to go back in and search, because people contact me through several different streams. It's like phoning somebody, and I choose to step into their world and phone them. And then I get disappointed if they don't pick up and then don't call me back within 24 hours. That's my expectation.
Do you think the correlation between speed and manners has happened as a result of this always-on
Yeah,
culture?
yeah,
Speed seems to be the highest echelon of everything now. Everything has to be speed and quick and
yeah,
deadlines. And I don't know, I feel like sometimes, slow and steady is underrated. I'd
yeah,
rather take what I do now, in full candor, and apologies to if anyone knows me who's listening to this and you're one of them. But when I get WhatsApps, I sometimes pin them or mark them as unread to
yeah,
come back to, because I always will reply to everyone.
yeah,
I just don't do it straight away
yeah,
because I'm so busy and I
yeah,
can't wait there, and I feel bad, but at the same time, I can't. Do you know what I mean? You can't necessarily respond straight away, but it doesn't mean you think anything less. In fact, I'd argue that I want to give it the attention it
yes,
deserves,
yeah,
and take my time
yeah,
with it.
yeah. Turn
But it
it,
seems to be,
turn
I
it.
don't know if that's a dirty, I feel like I'm in the minority there, though. I don't know.
No, no, no. Well, I'm in the minority with you. Absolutely, definitely. I think sometimes the other thing we do with communication is we sometimes, I don't know, we're on the run somewhere, we're in the middle of Sainsbury's, and somebody pings, and we look at it and go, "Oh, what did I look at that for?" Because we haven't got time to respond to it. So then we have to close it back down, and then we might forget about it, or you know what I mean? It's a nightmare. Communication is an absolute nightmare. And in terms of
Emails on
mental
a
health,
Sunday. No, it's like emails on a Sunday.
yeah, but people, like you say, people do it because they want to get it off their list. Sometimes, if very occasionally I would do that. Sometimes I'll put a line in there saying, "I'm just passing this to you now. I'm not expecting a response. I'm just trying to get it out of my head and passing it over to you."
Well, I've given myself Saturdays, and because when I set up my own company, I was working 6 days a week. So I'd work Monday to Friday with client work, and then Saturday morning would be my
Admin,
admin, VAT return, social media scheduling, the working in and on the business, all that kind of thing.
yeah,
And in recent weeks, now obviously business is back to where it was pre-COVID, and I'm actually very busy, but it's good. It's a good busy. So, but I've managed to sort of filtrate my time for Mondays and
yeah,
Thursdays focused.
yeah,
And I've now got Friday as my leftover day. So any other business I've not done, I can do on Friday, emails, this and that. My goal is to have 2 days every weekend. And I know feel like the self-employed sort of Gary V hustle culture seems to perpetuate this idea you have to be on 100,000 hours a week. But I just don't buy it, Kevin. I think you need your time, the downtime. And I think if that means I'll never be, hugely successful in traditional terms, then I'll take the hit, thanks, because I want to work to live and have a balanced life now. So
yeah, definitely. And people like Gary Vee, I sometimes look at some of his work and I'm like, come on, where's the downtime? There has to be a balance between our goals and our achievements, and then being enough. You know what I mean?
Do you see what I mean, Kevin? When you go on LinkedIn, there's hustle porn almost.
It's crazy.
Get up at 3, gym at 3:30, walk at 4, and it's just, everyone's different.
There was a really interesting post on LinkedIn probably about 8 months ago now, and it was a guy that went on and he said something to his daughter about, he was kind of coaching her a little bit and asking her to work harder, and she'd done something, and there was this outpouring of, oh my God, that's amazing, and what a great way to teach her, and yada, 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 just like 100 comments. And I went in, little old me went in and went, be really careful there, because it feels like you're setting her up. I was so gentle. It feels like you could be setting her up, and just be careful of her mental health. It's good that she's driven, but also it's really important that she's taking care of herself and looking after herself, and yada, yada, yada. He responded to everybody apart from me, did not respond to me at all. And I was like, how obvious is that I've just bricked you a little bit there. And I was like, but all of this outpouring of people going, oh my God, that's amazing, she's so driven. And I was like, in my head, I was going, yeah, and by the time she's 35, she'll be having a breakdown. Nice one. Well done, everybody.
Honestly, and this is what we're teaching the kids coming through now. I'm 37 now, but the graduates, when they're 21, 22 starting, I still call them the kids, because they literally feel like, in my industry, I'm a veteran, right, at my age. But I see them coming through and they're so like fresh, like with bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, and I love their enthusiasm and their energy, but they're so obsessed with like, I need to get that money, and my mate started at that bank and he started on 40K, and then, and I see them and I see a younger me in them, and I just want to say to them, it's not the be all and end all.
No.
Don't just put money in the financial bank, put money in the experience bank, put money in the bank of, learning and development and curiosity. I mean, these things just matter. These faculties matter in the long term as well.
Absolutely. I feel like we could literally talk and talk and talk. But at some point, we're going to have to bring this to a close. I have one last question for you. If there was one thing that you wanted the listeners to take away from this podcast, what would be your one thing?
You don't have to have a purpose or know what makes you happy. You have to know what doesn't make you happy and you don't want to do.
Yeah.
Block out those roads on your mental atlas and you'll create a better journey for yourself.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. And mine would be, I don't normally do this, but I'm adding one in today. Mine would be, life is tough. Get used to it. And once you get used to it, all of a sudden it becomes a lot easier.
Absolutely. I love that. Yeah, definitely. Like, you adjust the sail, all these things about, I love that cohort of life gives you lemonade.
Yeah.
Play the hand you're dealt, adjust the sails if the wind changes. I think there's some things that are immovable, but it doesn't mean you have to be crushed by it.
No, not at all. What we're talking about there is it's all mindset, isn't it? It's all about how we look at something. It's our mindset and looking at something. Simon, thank you so much. Maybe in the future we'll come back and do another one and just talk.
Oh, Kevin, I'd love to it's been a real pleasure. Thank you for having me on your podcast. I really appreciate it.
It's been a pleasure. It's a real pleasure to talk to somebody that is so passionate about mental health, that has their own story to tell, and a story by all accounts that is twisting and turning into a real healthier way. So
hopefully. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for listening to another version of Invincible You. That's it. We are done. Thank you again to Simon. So don't forget, we are looking for subjects. If we're not covering subjects that you wanted to cover, then please message in, and we'll do our damnedest to cover areas that you wanted to cover. Invincible You is all about personal growth, becoming the best possible version of who we were in all areas of that. Thank you to Home Radio. Home Radio can be accessed on, let's see if I can remember this, They have an iOS app and an Android app, and you can get it through Alexa, and you can get it on their website as well, which is homeradio.co.uk. They have a great playlist. Go across and listen to them. Thank you to them for producing the podcast, as they always do. I think that's it. I think I'm done. So remember, be kind to yourself, as I always say, and be kind to everybody around you. Thanks again, Simon.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Take care, everybody. Bye.